It's about to start. Cool. I'll wait a minute in case anyone else comes in. All right. I guess I'll start. So, welcome everyone to a guide to staying in America. This is about the O1 visa and the EB1A green card for extraordinary ability. What's great about the O1 is you can apply anytime. Unlike the H1B, which is a lottery, you don't even need to have a college degree to get it. As long as you can prove that you're at the top of your field, you can get it. And the EB1 is the fastest green card beside marrying an American. So I'm excited to dive right in. So my name is Tijul Wen. I'm the founder of extraordinary.com. And for the past 5 years, I've been obsessed with figuring out how to stay in America. So I originally am from Toronto, Canada. I was born to two lovely Canadian. I was born in I was born in Toronto, born to lovely uh, immigrant parents, and when I was 17, I first came to San Francisco after one of my side projects took off. And so when I came here, I realized, oh my God, this place is incredible. Look at all these incredible people at HackMIT. Like it's the most ambitious people in the world, I think, are in America. And I wanted to figure out how to stay. Now, the nuance is that I didn't have a college degree. And so the only route was to get an O1 visa. And I proceeded to hunt down every single person in Silicon Valley I can find who had the O1 visa. And I, went with a law firm. It took 8 months to put together a more than 500-page application, which was printed and shipped to the US government. And finally, I got approved for the visa. And it was crazy. Like the process for this visa is so opaque. You guys are probably international. In colleges, there's probably not any resource on the O1. And if you go to the website, it just says like examples of how to qualify, like Nobel Prize and all this different stuff. So I thought like, man, like I've met so many people who've gotten it from all these different fields. What if I like demystify the process? Because there's nothing like that. So I locked myself in a room. I tattooed follow through on my wrist, and then I uh, ended up making a video that's now the #1 video on the internet about the O1 visa, which you guys can watch. And now if you Google O1 visa, my face comes up. And that video has helped thousands of people come to America on the O1. And 6 months after that, I applied for the green card equivalent of the O1, which is called the EB1A. It does require it has the same qualifications, but the bar is much higher. And so when I was ready, I submitted an application. And that was in June 2024. The petition was submitted. It's called like the I-140. And then within 15 or 3 weeks, you get a result and it was approved. And so after your petition is approved for your green card, you file what's called a adjustment of status. So you don't actually have your green card yet. You sort of are like you qualify for the green card. And if you are Canadian or if you are non-Indian national or Chinese national, you can get it within like 6 to 12 months after approval. So in September 2024, I filed the adjustment of status process. I think I just turned 21 then. And then the company I was working at was acquired. I was on O1 then. And so I got what was called an agent O1 visa, which allowed me to work for, take on different contracts, actually work for multiple employers. And I ended up actually, working on extraordinary.com and like starting the company then. But the process for the adjustment of status, it really took 6 months. So in April 2025, I actually got my physical green card. after submitting the adjustment of status. And yeah, it's been, I didn't have to do an interview. And so the benefit of the EB1 is that it is much more straightforward. There's not necessarily a perm process. You don't have to have like a company, post like job openings. And if an American applies, like you have to restart the process again. And so it is the fastest process. And even for like Indian and Chinese nationals, I think the backlog right now is like a bit less than 5 years. And so, yeah, and that's pretty good comparatively to like 150-year backlog. So, um, yeah, so after going through this process, I realized, man, it's like so hard. So I ended up meeting every single extraordinary alien who's like came to America, immigrated here, done great work. People like Gabriel Rashi Purcell, there's Beluga. We got him his visa. He's a famous YouTuber. We have Andre Karpathy, Gary Tan, who's earlier. These guys built a company called Korea. They're like Series B now. You guys might have seen Interaction. They're building Poke. And talking with them, I realized that this process is so um, everyone shared the similar sentiment, like, oh, I use this law firm. It took like half a year, it took like 9 months, and then like we put it together and like it take like a week to respond. And so I was kind of done with that from talking to more than 500 people who received the O1 visa and EB1 and just like obsessing about like, hey, how can I build something better? And so that's what I did. I created a company called extraordinary.com. We help the world's best people, hopefully, like many of you, to come and stay in America. We've helped people like Anton Osika, the founder and CEO of Lovable, one of the fastest growing AI companies. This guy is a 16-year-old high school dropout, so you don't need a top college degree. As long as you can prove to people that you are the top of your field, you can get it. Moshe's one of the top uh, he's 18, but he built like 60% of Cognition's web UI, which is important for when we get into the O1 visa qualifications. And we work with a lot of companies that are very prominent in technology, like Founders Fund, Cognition, Cluely, Ramp, Lovable, Zapier, Interaction. I think Rocks is one of the other sponsors, um, which should be more and more Y Combinator companies. And our team has been behind more than 1,000 extraordinary ability visa approvals. I am a Thiel Fellow. Uh, this is my first time actually speaking in, I guess, like a college lecture room, which is cool. Mo over here, he's our founding head of operations. He has a JD from Harvard Law and was at Meta previously. Steve's been doing immigration longer than I've been alive. And Ben has done more than 60,000 interviews as a U.S. consular officer, like the guy that you go to the consulate and you get interviewed. And so he's a pro in terms of just setting up you guys up for success. And we've built a cohesive software experience that makes it super intuitive and really fast. So instead of, that like half a year or many months, it's super native and you can put together an entire 500K pace in 2 weeks or a week if you're on the ball. Now, many of you guys here are probably international, or you guys have many international friends. And what often the case is that you first come in on your F1 visa, right? Or maybe you're an H4 dependent, and then you hop on an F1 visa after you turn 21. And then after you graduate, if you get the OPT, which lasts for 1 year. If you're in STEM, you get the STEM OPT, which lasts for another 2 years. And then what? And so in many cases, you're often just the only options really that you guys have been told have been the H-1B. If you're Canadian, you have like the TN visa. But those aren't all the options you have. The thing that sucks about the H-1B is that it is a lottery. It is the government math.random, your entire future of whether you can stay in America, which is absurd. And we've helped a lot of people who are brilliant. For instance, we helped Tur. He's a staff engineer at Ramp. He just graduated from Duke. He tried to roll the H-1B lottery, I think 3 times over the course of 3 years of STEM OPT, could not get it, was going to leave, but then we came in there and then we helped him get it filed and get his O1 visa, which, now he can stay in America, doesn't have to get deported. Let's go. So, the O1 visa is great in the sense that you don't have to wait for April to submit a lottery in order to get it. There's no cap to it, unlike the H-1B. You don't necessarily need a degree. So let's say, you guys build something at HackMIT, it pops off, you win a prize, and then Gary Tan's like, yo, I like you guys, and then like gives you guys 500K. Then you could like the O1 visa, and this happens a lot. We've helped a lot of people through this process, but it allows people who haven't completed their degree to pursue um, uh like building things that like they actually want to do. Now you can only build it once you have the visa and work authorization, but more on that later. Um, and the O1, once you get it, you have 3 years at a time. Afterwards, you can always resubmit a new petition, which could grant you another 3 years. And then the other option that is not really laid out for many of you guys is the EB1. Actually, uh, this is a crazy secret. This is like the big law, the big tech companies. They aren't incentivized to actually tell you these pathways because they'd rather you be on like an H-1B and stuck working for them for like many years, right? Because a green card does grant you freedom. Like it's crazy. Like a green card gives you the privilege to be like homeless, without being deported. Like you could just like stay in America, which is crazy. That's freedom. And it's the fastest green card besides marrying someone. And you can always go to our evaluation for both visas and green card at extraordinary.com/evaluation. Now, um, this leads me to, I guess, going more in depth into the extraordinary ability visas. Um, there's a lot of benefits to this. So the O1A visa is what I originally came here on. There's two different types for the O1A. One is a company petitioner. So this could be your startup, this could be your friend's company, this could be a company you plan to join full time. Um, this grants you 3 years to work on that company. And once you file the petition, you can get a result in 14 business days through premium processing. What's also great about the O1, and this applies to all the O1 visas, is that it's a dual intent. So actually, this is like anecdotally, I've had friends who've gone to like visa interviews, and the sometimes officers are dicks, and they'll be like, "Hey, like, do you plan to get a green card?" And they've said yes, and then they get their visa denied and get banned because some certain visa types are um, single intent, so they're called like non-immigrant visas. And it sucks. So actually, once you have an O1 visa, you are actually allowed to apply for a immigrant visa like a green card. But before you get it, you just can't really disclose like intent to immigrate great here. There's another type of the O1 visa called the agent petitioner. So you guys might think that, oh, the only thing I can do is work for a single company, right? But actually, you can have a U.S. citizen or an individual act as your petitioner. And you can actually work for multiple different companies. So I did this. This is like the second O1 visa I got. I had my roommate, who was a U.S. citizen, be my petitioner. And that allowed me to take on contracts. I had like multiple different consulting gigs happening. And then I ended up like starting to tinker and work on the early parts of extraordinary.com thanks to my O1 agent visa. And that gives you flexibility because when you have like other visa types, you guys might have heard or had friends who are like, oh my God, I got to transfer my visa. Or like a big thing is like you on majority of work visas, you can legally only work on I th I think that role. So the agent petitioner option gives you it gives you the great flexibility to be able to explore, take on multiple different contracts. So it's an option that I chose to use in my timeline. Um, for the EB1 green card, the it you file what's called the I-140, which is the petition. The petition is just like, hey, am I extraordinary? Can I prove that I qualify for this green card? You get a result in 14 business days. And then afterwards, you can file the adjustment of status whenever. but basically you have to be in the US, and then you file it. You can't leave, but during that time, they process the case, and then they usually, if you're non-Chinese or Indian, they'll send you the green card in 6 to 12 months. I got mine in like 5 or 6 months. If you're Chinese in or Indian, there is like a wait time of like a bit less than 5 years. Um, but what's great about it is like I didn't have to have an interview. Whereas I think most green cards, when you go and apply, you gotta go show up at a specific time. That's also one reason why most of the times you're not supposed to leave, because like they might just like surprise, come in interview, and they like audit everything. And so I'm very fortunate thanks to that, and now I have a green card. So the EB1 and the O1 are very similar in the sense that um, oh, one more thing about the EB1 is you can have this is really special. You can have either a company sponsor it or you could self-sponsor it. You could self-petition the EB1, and that's what I did. And so while I didn't really necessarily know what I was going to work on or wasn't like actively working at a singular company, I could just petition like, hey, I think I'm really good at what I do. I think I'm gonna bring like more jobs to the US. I think I plan to build more companies in the US, which I'm doing right now, and create more American jobs, which is fantastic. But that gives you the freedom to, like kind of control your destiny and not have to stay at a singular, I think, employer as it processes. So both the O1 visa and the EB1 share this very similar qualifications. In all these qualifications, their point are to prove that you are at the top of your field. So there's 8 qualifications that overlap for both the O1 and EB1. And both the O1 and EB1 require you to qualify for at least 3 of these 8 qualifications. Though, at the caveat, the bar for EB1 is much higher because it is like the most sought after green card. It's like gold because of how fast it is. And so, there's critical role employed in critical capacity at a company. The caveat here is like the company has to have a distinguished reputation. More on that later. There's judging, so you're judging the works of others in your field. Membership, so like you're part of like very selective memberships that are judged by experts who are in your field. You have different awards. This is easier to grasp. High compensation, pretty easy. You make a lot of money, or other ways. There's original contributions of major significance. So you've like created something new or unique. Maybe this is like your research project or something you've published during your like internship or something, or like throughout the year. There's published materials. So this is media about you. This could be you're on like TV, or like there's an article written about you, or you're cited in an interview. Ideally for this qualification, it is solely focused on you. It's about you and about your skills, less of like, I don't know, you're like quoted randomly somewhere. And then there's authorship, which is like, hey, you've like actually published scholarly articles in your fields. This could be both, for like science, like research papers, or it also could be like business oriented. So like you contribute something to Forbes. So I'm gonna go through each of these one by one. And do you have a question?
For published material, you like this PhD, basically.
It's ideally, I mean, some things you look for in published materials, and I'll get into it later. Are like, does it have citations that is like more legitimate? I think that anecdotally, like if you just write something for a class, it's not really published anywhere. Ideally, it's published in a significant journal or something that is like recognized in your field. And so, like if you are in machine learning, like you're an AI researcher, it'd be cool to publish in like NeurIPS or ICML. Well, hopefully that answers your question.
By virtue of publishing it as a doctoral student, by virtue of just doing that, no.
All right. So, all right, we can go through more questions. Yeah. Hey.
I don't know. What if you win, let's say you win a Nobel Prize, like the Wolf Prize, because of the paper that you published? Do you automatically qualify for the O1?
So there's a funny nuance. It's like actually if you win a major award in your field, like let's say you win the Nobel Prize, that itself will just get you the O1 or EB1 or has a high likelihood because it's actually like cited. So like as an official example, you either qualify for a major prize in your field, like a Grammy or Nobel Prize, or you prove extraordinary ability through like these 8 different categories, which you need at least 3 of to argue and win. And I would encourage you to try. All right. Any other questions before I dive in?
Yeah, for like does like open source major open source contributor to like a major software?
It can. You ideally have like a lot of proof that I can show you more anecdotes actually when we get to that section. Actually, I think a lot of the questions in terms of the nuances of every category might be answered as I go through each section because I go into like real anecdotes and then just kind of explain like what it's looking for. So I will hold off on Q&A for later. So the first category is critical role at a company with a distinguished reputation. This is very important. There's 2 aspects of it. One is you're critical somewhere, and second is the distinguished reputation of that company. So like you could be a founder of like your startup, but like your startup is like, I don't know, how much revenue is it doing? Like you just incorporated, like it's not really distinguished out there, even though you're critical to it because you might be the founder and CEO. And the inverse of that problem is, you could be like an intern at Apple. Like Apple's super distinguished or like worth trillions of dollars, yet you're an intern there. And so this is why there's 2 aspects of that. You need to prove both how much you've contributed to the company, and how distinguished that company is. And so here are like a few examples of people that who we've given hoodies to and helped. So this is like Danielle Fong. She's the founder of Lightsail Energy. Founder obviously is like very critical because you started the company. And then this was backed by Bill Gates, Coastal Ventures, Peter Thiel, and the company was also featured in a lot of media like Forbes and Fortune magazine. Um, Over here, this is Evil Rabbit. If you guys are familiar with the designer, he was the founding designer there. So he was like super early there. Designed the logo of a company now worth like many billions of dollars. And I think but that explains itself. Um, Emma here, she founded a social networking company. Also a founder, I guess, which had more than like 500,000 users within its first year. Um, Silas over here, he's on the founding team of Cognition. So he's an early engineer there, and Cognition, I guess, it's created Devin, the AI software engineer. And so it's like very distinguished. Now, these are pretty extreme examples for it. If you are planning to join an early stage company or a company that is, you're trying to found something, it's important to think about, hey, how do I like prove that my company is like distinguished? And my advice here is just like focus on like making your company great. Like uh get users, get traction, build something people want. And I feel like all the other things externally will follow through there. And if you are like, let's say, working somewhere like you're working at, I don't know, Apple or different place, it is pretty hard to prove like criticality, but like, hey, maybe like invent like a core feature that's like critical to it, or you've like driven massive revenue at like this very large company, right? Those can be attributed, and typically, we've had like you would have like people within the company vouch for you through like support letters, which we can talk about more. The second category I'm going over is judging the works of peers or others in your field. Here, this could be peer review for, major conferences in your field. So if you do research in a certain section, field, and you publish papers at like the most well-known conferences there, and you review other papers there, it's like the definition of this category. There's other different ways to different types of judging that we've seen anecdotally. There's top hackathons like HackMIT. So if you're a judge here, that's helpful. Investment due diligence and scouting. So, if you're a scout at A16Z where you're reviewing deals where investors are deploying millions of dollars because in companies that are part of your field, that is a part of judging the works of others within your field. If you've peer-reviewed papers, of course, or like you've been a selection committee to like these like distinguished awards or memberships. Like let's say, you select the people part of like MIT Technology Reviews 35 under 35 or awards, which is like a popular web design uh award that gives awards to like the like most well-designed websites. So if let's say you're just like a full stack front-end design engineer, right? If you're a judge there, that's reflective. And some of the key aspects is when you're trying to think about, hey, what do I do? No, you can't just like judge like any hackathon. You have to think about the scale of the award, the selectivity of the judges, and like, hey, like why is this like really significant in your field? Like, are the other judges like some of also like the top experts in your field as well? Um, the third category I'm gonna go over is memberships. So these are memberships in associations that require outstanding achievements as judged by international experts. So there's three aspects to that. Well, two. One is it's good to prove that hey, like the people that get into this or this membership, this organization, have to have done like outstanding things. And also the people who are running it or who select you are experts in your field. And so some examples might be like if you're in crypto, there's like the Paradigm Fellowship. So like the Paradigm team will select some of the most like brilliant technical minds in like cryptography, math, blockchain. And then you're part of this like really solid membership, which has produced many like very famous alumni. Maybe Forbes 30 under 30. Y Combinator counts as one, right? You have people like Gary Tan, who select members. So I think they select 100 companies, and each batch gets more than 20,000. So there's that selectivity aspect that is really important to that membership. And Gary, I think, is like an expert in the field. Even scout programs, you can argue, although it's best to have singular, one category for like one evidence for each category. IEEE is on the official USCIS website as an example. To be a member there, I think they select you, and that's after you publish a lot of research in your field. Interact Fellowship School, South Park Commons is another accelerator. There's some nuance with accelerators that we've seen anecdotally, which is like you just want to make sure that as much of it is focused on your achievements and merits and less so of like a transaction between like two parties, like, oh, I'm gonna give you some money for some investment. So it has to more focus on the fact that like, hey, like you're extraordinary and I want to bring you a part of our organization. I'm a part of two memberships here that I think are like good examples. One is like the Thiel Fellowship. These are just screen clips from the website, but it's like, it's selected by Peter Thiel, who's a well-known technology investor, one of the first investors in Facebook. And then it's pretty selective, and there's also like a significant like grant to it. And then the second program is called Spearhead. Um, it's uh, it's a program run by Naval Ravikant and Jeff Fagnan. These are like well-known venture capitalists, and they select founders to give them capital to invest. And then what's helpful is if the membership has a lot of really famous alumni in your field. And so even on the website here, it's like, oh, there's like 80 or so members in Spearhead. But the companies they've built have accumulated to more than like $86 billion, which I think is pretty cool. I think my company is like the lowest valued one amongst the cohort, but um, it's helpful when you think about which memberships to join and like how to prove them. Like it has to when we argue, it we can use like other notable members who graduated the program or in the membership to prove that it is in fact a membership that requires outstanding achievement. Um, there's awards and prizes. Now, if you have a major internationally recognized award, that can just outright get you the O1 or EB1, like a Nobel Prize. That's what they say. But those are obviously a bit hard to come by. And so, this itself is a category that you can go for. So, different different if you win different grants in your field, that can count, like research grants. You win like major CTS, major programming competitions. You can actually, in some cases, argue like being backed by a top tier venture capital firm like A16Z or Coastal Ventures. Like these are super selective. They're very selective. And so, where you're able to, we've anecdotally argued it as like a major award. Here we have like Beluga, YouTuber with 10 million subscribers. He got like the YouTube play button. This is like a major award for for being a creator. There's like less than 1,000. I think there's around 1,000 people who have it, and like of the people who received it includes like Cristiano Ronaldo, Mr. Beast, like Taylor Swift, like a bunch of very well-known people. And so when you're trying to prove like, hey, this is a significant prize for excellence, having other people who have earned the award who are like really well known in your field. So if you're a creator like Beluga, people like Mr. Beast, it's super helpful. Um, we have some other examples too, like I think Felix, he won like Apple WWDC. He's like the CTO of Interaction, the guys who make Poke.com. Ankar, he got his O1, I think when he was 19, but he was awarded like the national, like I think one of the national civilian awards in India by the president of India. So like, there aren't necessarily like um set awards, but if you have done something impressive, maybe it's merited you like to come to MIT. There's ways that you can argue it. There's also like Magnificent Grant, King of Grammy. Emergent Ventures is run by economist Tyler Cowen. I'm a big fan of it. They do 10K plus grants multiple times a year. It's very, very selective, but it's also very frequent. Here's Diego. He's a founder that we've helped, but he was like the youngest person awarded like MIT's 35 under 35 at the age of 19. So here's some awards. When it comes to published materials, this is like about you in major trade publications or major media. Here's like Toby, the 16-year-old. He was in the front page of the BBC. He just like, hey, fuck high school. Let me go to Silicon Valley. Deval Stroff, he's one of the three musketeers in Elon Musk's biography. And I think Walter Isaacson wrote a recommendation letter for his EB1 green card, which he got. But having media about you, especially about your work, is really helpful. Like, if you start a company, you raise some money, often people have published like fundraising announcements or articles about their work in places like TechCrunch or Forbes. Maybe they do interviews on like CNN or BBC. And ideally, for media, it focuses on on your work in your field. So if you're working on a technology company and your field's like technology or computer science, ideally it covers that. Ideally it focuses as much about you. So slight mentions, like you're in a photo somewhere, they could be helpful. Like, oh, I was like, featured in like Business Insider, even though you're like a person as part of a 5% image, right? But it's you wouldn't count on that because the USCS does review it very intensively. So ideally, you just do the real thing, get pieces that focus as much about your work or on you in major places. And what's really cool is that there's more modern form factors of media. I mean, the media landscape is like evolving, and I've seen like anecdotally that let's say you're covered in like a major YouTube channel or a major show somewhere, or there's like you're covered on like the Tim Ferriss show or like Joe Rogan or something like that. Like these features or mentions are helpful, and like it's kind of our job to figure out how to argue it because the premise really is just like there's a media source that is like significant in your field, and we basically have to prove that through the circulations have like millions of people in your field see it, Is it very well respected? And so when you're considering like different how to think about like media, like you should try and weigh that, right? If it gets 1 million readers a month, that's really incredible. And for you to have like a piece there about your work is awesome as well. Um, so original scientific, scholarly or business related contributions of major significance is one of the hardest ones to qualify, mostly because you have to both prove that, hey, like I have this original concept or original invention or original product, and it's also significant in your field. So it's quite hard to prove. This is Silas. He has an O1 visa. He was at Cognition, working at Cognition, and he created Pidgeot, which is the most. Do you guys know like GeoBolt, like Rainbolt? You know, like the guy who's like online, and there's this game called GeoGuessr where you get placed in on a random place in Google Maps, and you're like, where am I in the world? But he basically trained an AI to be superhuman at just like seeing a random photo from place on Earth and being like, okay, it's here in the world. And that was seemed pretty original. I think it's pretty easy to argue that it's original because it's never been done before. And it got millions of views. I think like Rainbow challenged it. It went very viral. I think there's some like news coverage of it as well. And so that was able to be argued for like original contribution. He also made this thing called Chat BCG. I think that's like Bing Boston Consulting Group or something, and it had like 400,000 users. And so, he's an engineer. You guys are engineers and builders. You guys can create things that, have get a lot of attention, get a lot of users, is significant in your field. It's new. You could probably like create something here that's just like incredible. There's a chance at it, that ends up getting adopted a lot. And um all these aspects can help support that. So let's say, you've invented a new like framework. I don't know, you created like MCPs or something, right? And then you open source at GitHub, like those stars as part of the GitHub project for the code that you've written can be argued for like why it's major significant in your field. I think most of you guys here are programmers, and often that we've seen with engineers who try and argue this is that they've created really large like GitHub repositories. So this is Moshe. He's the 18-year-old who got approved. He created Typewin, which is like the safety of TypeScript with the magic of Tailwind. That has like 2.3K stars. It's been used and adopted a lot. And we were able to argue original contributions. And what's helpful when you're arguing this is, we get like experts in your field to just write an opinion letter of like, hey, like actually Typewin is like really original, it's significant, and kind of like give it a third-party objective opinion in terms of how significant and original like what you've created is. Anton, before creating Lovable, he created GPT Engineer. GPT Engineer was just like a CLI interface. It was like one of the original like agentic coding builders, and that thing is one of the biggest GitHub repositories out there, right? It's under his name. It has 54,000 stars on GitHub. And so that we argued and we got him his O1 visa. And what's helpful is that from this open source code base, he productionized it. So companies took the code, well, it's his own company, but companies productionized his code and made like many millions of dollars off of that. And it was certainly original for its time, as we're seeing like this whole new wave of like vibe coders. Darlo Rauch, who came here, he's the founder and CEO of Vercel. Fun fact, he actually created Socket.io and Mongoose, which is, I think, like applies like schemas to MongoDB. So he's like a technical genius, not only just like a great CEO, but he open sourced those. Those are widely adopted across different engineers. And so that's very helpful. Alex Rodriguez, he's another Thiel fellow, but he fun fact, he was like the youngest CEO of a public company. But he was I think one of the first people to make, self-driving trucks. And so he's more of like a mechanical engineer from Waterloo. And so that was pretty significant given his that technology that he created ended up becoming a public company. And he's yeah, it seemed a pretty original first time. Um, I love money. Who doesn't? For high compensation, you have to prove that you have been compensated top of your field. The bar for O1s, I think, is like, top 10%. For EB1s, I would go like as much as we can, like top 1%, in terms of like your compensation for your role in your field. So there's some cool aspects about that. Like you can argue equity. Ideally, it is as liquid as possible, but we're helping an early Cursor employee right now. And Cursor's worth like I think $9 billion and his shares are worth many, many millions. And what's cool is, like there's been a lot of investors in Cursor, and so it's like, you can better justify the valuation. Cognition, Ramp are also our customers too. If you are a younger company, it is a bit harder, especially if it's like, hey, I just started a new company and I just like raised at like, a $10 million valuation, which is what a lot of companies are getting nowadays off the bat. It is a bit harder to convince. We've seen at least that your stock is actually worth that, given this is like such an early stage. It's such an early stage company. For your salary, you want to be able to it factors in both the role and the region. And so you could be paid top 10 percentile as a software engineer in San Francisco, and you would have to back that up with that data. That might be absurd given like how much companies are paying people in San Francisco. But if you're abroad, what's cool, it's like, let's say, you're from Sweden and you worked in Sweden as a engineer, maybe you even worked remotely for a different company, but you're paid from like, they're like Swedish company. You could, as long as relative to where you are based, and where you work, you're paid top 10 percentile as a software engineer, that can apply then. So that makes it a bit easier because, top 10% salary in Sweden might be a lot lower than like in San Francisco. I have a question.
Counted over city, province, country, what do you count?
National level.
Nationally? Yeah, Mo can answer that. Um, yeah, it tends to be by like country, because you want to go for as like legit data sources when you argue these things, and those tend to just be like the government websites. So yeah. Um, and then when you try and prove these things, it has to be real. So you prove them with like your pay stubs, your real pay stubs, your tax returns, and then if you have anything like the valuation of the company, and that's helpful to prove how much your shares are worth. Yeah. The eighth one and final one for today is like authorship of scholarly articles. This ideally, what's weighted here that we've seen is like it's kind of simple, that like I look for. I'm like, okay, like how many citations does it have? How cool is your Google Scholar profile? I usually look at that. And so for a lot of like scientific or like STEM based fields, the different papers you write are good. Another factor is like, is it published in major conferences? So again, ML publishing Neureps or ICML, or if you're a biology researcher, if you publish in Nature, it holds a lot of weight. I think the they definitely, it's definitely a significant source of legitimacy, because these places that you publish to, they have like world experts who are reviewing your work, and it's like it's a big feat to publish this. So it helps with your legitimacy. Chip, she's like a famous like author, taught like ML systems at Stanford, but She had like 1,200 citations. Fana, also wearing her hoodie. She's like an MIT PhD, but from her paper, she has more than 1,600 citations. Chip also just wrote a textbook on AI engineering and designing machine learning systems, which is very, very popular out there. We might have like a copy here as well. But that publishing scholarly textbooks like an O'Reilly textbook is very legit. And if you're more on like the business side, you can publish and like contribute to significant like scholarly like the equivalent for business. So like let's say you're a founder or an entrepreneur, like if you've written in Forbes or have an article in Forbes where you're educating other experts in your field about a topic you specialize in, that can be very helpful as well. Or maybe you publish in like the Harvard Business Review. So those are the 8 qualifications of like the O1 visa. And for some people, it's the 8 for the EB1 as well. One aspect of both of these petitions, and this is something for you guys to think about as you guys build up your profile, the strength of your profile, and it's also generally very helpful is like, it's good to build and compound relationships with people professionally who are based here, who are notable and top in your field. Every O1 petition has a advisory opinion letter, which is someone who is based in the US, somewhat familiar with your work, doesn't have financial or economic incentive necessarily in your case, but is like a well-known expert in your field. And the point of the advisory opinion letter, it's mostly to like verify that, hey, like I, as an expert in your field, I think you are like extraordinary. You can apply for this visa. And also, you also just generally have other support letters. They're somewhat analogous to like recommendation letters for colleges, and they serve different functions of like proving the different qualifications that you are trying to argue. And so, I worked with Naval Ravikant on a company called AirChat, and he's also now like he's also the first investor in Extraordinary. But I've known him since I was like 17, just from cold emailing him and then just like working together. And he's written a letter, and he's like a well-known angel investor and entrepreneur. One of my friends, Advait, he had Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, like sign one of his advisory opinion letter, because he was in Y Combinator doing their program, and Sam Altman was like is also like familiar and just friendly with them with YC since he was I think the president prior to Gary Tan. Um, and so, it's very important to keep well-known people like updated. You'd be surprised a lot of people are like relatively, open, but it's good to like build and compound those relationships with people. So yeah, I mean, if you if you want to stay in America, you can go to dictionary.com/evaluation. It goes through many examples of real people who've gone through the process, anecdotes of what they've done to qualify, and then after you fill it out, you get to talk with Mo and I. And once we help you get approved, we send you an Alien of Extraordinary Ability hoodie, like the one I'm wearing right now. So thank you guys. We can move on to Q&A.
So if someone is very strong with three out of 8 criteria,
Yeah.
would you just take it, or you would recommend adding more?
So the thing with this is like a misnomer. So this question is like, hey, if you have three criteria, if you think you qualify for 3 criteria, is it good to submit? So the meta with I guess submitting a visa petition is, thank you guys. The meta for submitting a visa petition is you want to try and get it approved in one go. And when you submit these cases, there's someone at the end who's like going through the policy manual, going through like, do I like one by one qualification by qualification and checking like, hey, do you qualify for this? Do you not qualify for this? And so we tend to recommend you have at least 4 categories, because let's say you submit 3, but only 2 are approved. USCIS sends what's called an RFE or request for additional evidence, which they sort of like argue, okay, like we don't agree that you qualify or you're extraordinary in this way. Here's why we need additional evidence, and it's painful. It delays the process. We don't like to deal with it. We try and minimize that percentage as much as possible, and we haven't really gotten many at all because we're good at what we do. But you want to have multiple categories that are as strong as possible so that you maximize the chances that the result is at least 3 of those categories are approved. Yeah.
So I actually reached out to you on LinkedIn like years ago, and
Really?
I'm working with one of the attorneys you recommended.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Steve's on our team.
So my question is about critical ability.
Critical role?
The critical role.
Okay.
So imagine if you're working in a big company where showing your critical ability is really hard. Versus you also have like a startup on the side where it's easy, but then showing the critical role of the startup is very hard. How do you kind of like balance it out so you can put together a powerful application?
Well, from what I've seen, we've worked with people who've worked at very big companies, like companies like Ramp, like $10 billion or more. And some of them do like core contributions. And so like, for instance, let's see, what's a good anecdote? I don't know, like,
Kind of help here. So
Yeah.
basically, if your role is critical within a large institution's development, that could be an interesting example. It's very hard to answer your question of like trade-offs between 2 roles. That just depends on your particular case. So someone has to kind of dig in and figure out what the trade-offs are, what the argument is, what the field is. But it's not necessary that you're working at a large organization, and a critical role can't be argued because you can be critical to a department within a large organization.
Yeah. So if I don't know, you built most of Apple's Safari team,
Yeah.
right? Like while like Apple's so freaking huge and Safari is like worth like a ton of money. But if you've been instrumental in terms of leading that team, that you can argue as like an organizational unit amongst this massive behemoth. If that makes sense. And then I guess the advice is just be essential to like your work. If you're working on a company and allowed to work on it, just be good, do the real thing, you know.
Just one thing I want to add is that it's not just hitting the categories of the visa. There's a holistic analysis that the adjudicator is going to make on whether or not an individual is extraordinary. So a lot of folks come to this thinking like, I check the boxes, therefore I get the visa. First of all, checking the boxes is a lot harder than you might think. You may have a lot more qualifications than you think, but it's also very, very hard to convince the adjudicator. The way I look at it is, it's like you are an athlete and you're going to be judged like the Olympics, right? You're going to go in front of an Olympic judge who's going to rate your performance. You need to go in with a really good coach, us, or the best coaches out there, but you have to train, you have to make sure that once you go there, that you've practiced, you've got the right evidence, because the adjudicator, right, the judge, is going to meticulously analyze all the evidence that you've presented, right? So it's not just like, I got one of the things that I saw in a presentation today, it's a checkbox, I'm good to go for the category. There's a holistic analysis. Is that particular qualification important in your field? How does it interact with the other pieces of evidence that are put forth? So it's math, but also a little bit of art. Do you see what I mean? So it's a holistic kind of struggle to get you across the finish line.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the person at the end who's adjudicating the case is a person, and if it could just be pure vibes, it's like, you're like borderline on case, but like I just think holistically, your profile isn't extraordinary. And anecdotally, we've seen cases or people come to us and be like, oh, like you just get this like generic response of like, oh, you have like different categories, but like I think from a holistic analysis, and this applies significantly to the EB1 green card, is like we don't think you are like extraordinary or have like sustained acclaim in the US. So I think generally it's just important to like focus on like doing great work in your field versus viewing this as like a checkbox system. Like that can get you to college, but like to get you to America and like to do actual extraordinary things, like go try and do great work here.
Create a really defensible case, make it really hard for them to say no, and make it very easy for them to say yes. That's your goal.
I don't think we have time for more questions, unfortunately.
All right. Well, it looks like we're out of time, but Mo and I will be hanging around at HackMIT. We're here tonight and also tomorrow. So thank you all for coming and listening to me yap. Well, yeah.
Oh, that we could want to stay in my position, become like a professor.
In a